Hello my friends and welcome to Greatest Rock and Metal. What is Greatest Rock and Metal? Well, here I talk about my favourite greatest rock and metal bands and albums based on my experiences and my memories. I've listened to thousands of albums over the years, been to hundreds of gigs, and I share with you some of the greatest experiences for me related to rock and metal. If you enjoy these episodes, please subscribe, press the red button so that you can see future ones. Today I'm going to be talking about Metallica. Okay? But today is a review, and I'm going to be reviewing this. This is their latest album, S&M2. Now, it's been about 2 months, I think, since this was released. Now, I like to live with albums before I review them. I like to play them many times so I can really get a feel for exactly what it is I want to say. First, we need to have a little bit of history about S&M2. I'm going to presume, if you're watching this, you know who Metallica are already. Metallica, I think it's fair to say, are the biggest heavy metal band. Iron Maiden, very, very close to them, but I think in terms of not just size of gigs, but also in terms of album sales, Metallica would have it on a worldwide basis. And they've been around for many, many years now. Their first album was released in I think it was 1981, Kill 'Em All, and they've had a series of brilliant and not so brilliant albums since then. This, their latest then, S&M2. Now, why S&M2? Well, because in 1999 they played a concert which was recorded and later released as S&M. And the S&M stands for S is Symphony and M is of course Metallica. Symphony and Metallica. Because for the first time, but not the first time for a rock or metal band, there'd been other bands who had worked with symphonies before, most notably Deep Purple, who many years ago were probably the first rock band to work with the symphony orchestra, to mesh the two styles together. And those of you who know your Metallica history will know that the drummer Lars Ulrich is a huge Deep Purple fan, and hence why Metallica decided to do their own version of meshing their heavy metal songs with the symphony orchestra. And on S&M, even though it was not an original idea, it worked. It was a good album, good selection of tracks to choose from. Sometimes, as I will talk about with S&M2, it's just too much. And I'll talk about what I mean about that later. But overall, S&M was a success. So, fast forward. 2019, 20 years since the S&M, Metallica decided to do S&M2, and this, a year later, was the result. There's a Blu-ray and DVD and CDs, etc. This is the vinyl album set, and I have to say, now one thing Metallica are very, very good at is packaging and artwork. The cover for this is fantastic. You can see the M Metallica logo there, and if you look very, very closely, we've got the S of the violin that you'll see in a violin, and the 2 that makes the other part of the violin. Very, very clever design, and the packaging of this vinyl album is fantastic. If we look through, you open it up, it's like a mini book. Look at that in the middle there. brilliant. The full Metallica logo across the center, and then yet another opens again. Why so many pages, so to speak, for a vinyl album? Well, because of what is inside. We have 1, 2, and the book. We'll come on to the book in a minute. 3, 4 LPs in this set. That is why it's such a deluxe packaging. We look at the album itself. I've been lucky enough to get what is called the orange marbled version, the limited edition orange marbled version, designed to look like the woodwind instruments of a symphony orchestra. Looks fantastic, plays fantastic as well. So, before we talk about the tracks and the booklet, it's time for Rock T-Shirt by the Sea. Okay, so let's take a look at the booklet that comes with this album. It's a beautifully produced booklet, very nice, shiny. Again, it's got some kind of embossing on it. I don't know another word to describe it, so that's the word I would use. And there's the description of the show, the idea behind the show, etc. And some stunning photos in there. Again, beautiful. It feels beautiful. It looks beautiful. You won't really get the full effect unless you actually have it in your hand. And some fantastic photos of the band in action. Of course, this album also, there's a Blu-ray DVD available of the show to watch, and it is much better to watch than just listen to. This is a show that really benefits from the visual aspect as well, rather than just listening to this show. But I'm going to review the album itself. So in terms of the sound quality, it's Metallica. Metallica have a history, a varying history of sound qualities across their albums. You have albums, studio albums like St. Anger and Death Magnetic, where people aren't so keen on the way that they sound. You have And Justice for All, which had hardly any bass guitar audible in it, for which they were criticised. The sound of this live album is perfect. One thing that you have to remember when you've got a loud heavy metal band and an orchestra with God knows how many instruments there, trying to mix all of those in to get the sound is very, very difficult to do. The sound engineer, the producer, the mixer, all of this led by a guy called Greg Fidelman. I think I pronounced his name correctly. That's a fantastic job. He's been working with Metallica now for a while, and he does a really, really good job. So, it sounds great. I do have some criticism of this album. Now, there has been fantastic reviews for this album everywhere, and as a standalone show, I would agree. Yeah, it's a good to great Metallica show. Where I am disappointed is in the selection of the tracks. Now, we already have S&M. So here was an opportunity for me, given that they had had other studio albums released since S&M, to do some more tracks from those studio albums. So to take more from the latest one, Hardwired to Self-Destruct, to take more from Death Magnetic, to maybe take more from St. Anger, and also from Reload. Yes, Reload was covered here, but maybe delve into the Load and the Reload era a little bit more as well. Instead, there were 10 tracks, or 11 tracks if you include the opening Ecstasy of Gold, that were repeated between the two albums. That is a missed opportunity for me, because to be honest, they sounded pretty much the same. Although I would say that Wherever I May Roam on S&M2 for me sound better than S&M, the original. But other than that, they're all pretty much the same. So it doesn't leave us with a huge selection of new tracks. The new tracks that are chosen, however, are excellent. We've got The Day That Never Comes. I actually think this one is better than the studio version. Sounds fantastic, absolutely fantastic. We have Confusion, okay. Moth into Flame, a brilliant song that can't lose with or without an orchestra. Halo on Fire, again a new song from Hardwired to Self-Destruct, okay. Then to start the second half of the show, they have the orchestra playing alone on Intro to Cynthian Suite and the Cynthian Suite itself. We also then get, after the orchestra has done its bit, Metallica joining the orchestra for another classical track called the Iron Foundry Opus 19. Now, this where for me the album has gone wrong. I know they wanted to showcase an orchestra on its own, but if I want to see an orchestra on its own, I will go to an orchestra on its own. And if Metallica wanted to play along with an orchestra on an orchestral track, why not pick a famous orchestral track? Something by a Mozart or a Beethoven, something that we've all heard, and they have then metallicized it or metallicized it, or however you like to say it, like they've done with so many covers in the past. Yeah, one thing that's been brilliant about Metallica is their ability to take very famous or obscure cover songs and really make them their own. You've got the Garage Inc. selection with lots of brilliant cover versions on there. Why not have done that with a more famous classical track that us casual fans would have heard and thought, wow, yeah, I can kind of get into that. Not just pick a... I understand why they picked Iron Foundry, because it's got that heavy metal vibe to it, but it's very repetitive, it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't do anything special. It's not something that's memorable. So that part of the show I would have changed. Then we go into the Unforgiven 3, a track from Death Magnetic, which is done very, very well indeed, with James actually singing along with the orchestra on his own. Very well done, and this is what you want from an album like S&M2. You want them to try and mix it up a little bit more with their own tracks. It would have been interesting to have heard the Blackened. They've recently done an acoustic version of Blackened. It would have been interesting if they could have revamped Blackened for this. For example, a track that didn't appear on S&M and would have been a great introduction onto S&M2. All Within My Hands, an acoustic version of that. Again, another great version. And now we come on to Anesthesia Pulling Teeth. Long-time Metallica fans know, obviously, the famous Cliff Burton solo that precedes Whiplash on Kill 'Em All. Now again, you read many reviews and they're all raving about this. I don't know why. I don't get it. I suspect if you're in the auditorium, or the stadium, I should say, what was it? No, an arena. If you're in the arena, you maybe feel the emotion. On the album, it comes across a bit flat, to be honest. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. And then we get into the tracks which are pretty much mainstays of any Metallica live show. The final 5, Wherever I May Roam, 1, Master of Puppets, Nothing Else Matters, Enter Sandman. You know what you're going to get with those 5 tracks. They're just straight down the middle, as they always are, with the orchestra just kind of playing on top of it. And that's where it gets a little bit muddy. The same as it did, to be honest, on S&M2. Sometimes it just doesn't work with an orchestra. There's just too many instruments. For me, an orchestra should be adding something to it. To the back half with some of those tracks, okay, not with Nothing Else Matters, because as a ballad that kind of works very well with an orchestra, but certainly 1, Master of Puppets, Enter Sandman, orchestra adds nothing. If anything, it detracts from the quality of those great songs. So there you have it. That's my review of S&M2. A good album. If you're into Metallica, it's already part of your collection, I am sure. If you're not, I would just go for the DVD, the Blu-ray, to see the whole experience and not worry so much about picking up the soundtrack, so to speak. Okay, thank you for listening to Greatest Rock and Metal. I hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, please press the red button to subscribe to see future episodes. And remember, as always, we rock.